Princess Vera of the Stellan Empire had never lost a wager in her life. Her species possessed cognitive abilities that made probability calculation instinctive, allowing them to predict outcomes with remarkable accuracy. The Stellans had conquered 14 star systems through strategic brilliance alone, never needing to fire a single weapon. Their reputation as master tacticians was known across 3 galactic QUADRA so when the human ambassador proposed a simple game of chance during the treaty negotiations, Vara saw it as an opportunity to humiliate the upstart species that dared to claim territory in Stellan space. The humans had appeared seemingly from nowhere, expanding rapidly through methods the Stellans found crude and inefficient. Yet somehow, these illogical creatures had managed to hold 3 resource-rich worlds that the Empire desperately needed. The game was absurdly simple by Stellan standards. The human ambassador, a weathered man named Marcus, produced a small cube with 6 faces marked with dots. He called it a die. The rules were straightforward. They would each roll the cube 3 times, and whoever achieved the highest total would win. The stakes, however, were substantial. If Vara won, humanity would cede the disputed systems immediately. If Marcus won, Vara would marry a human of his choosing and cement a permanent alliance between their peoples. Vara's advisors had protested violently, but she silenced them with a gesture. The probability was simple mathematics. Each face had an equal chance of appearing, meaning the expected value was 10.5 for 3 rolls. With her ability to influence probability through quantum observation techniques that Stellans had mastered millennia ago, she could easily ensure her victory. Humans possessed no such abilities. They were blind to the underlying mathematical structures of reality. She agreed to the terms. The treaty hall fell silent as servants brought forward a ceremonial table. Delegates from both sides gathered around, the tension palpable. Marcus smiled pleasantly, seeming unconcerned with the enormity of what he had wagered. Vara found his casual demeanor irritating. Did he not understand what was at stake? 3 entire worlds, billions of lives, resources that could fuel the Empire for centuries? Vara rolled first. She extended her consciousness into the quantum field, feeling the probability waves collapse according to her will. The die tumbled across the table. 6. Perfect. She rolled again. 6. Her advisors relaxed visibly. The 3rd roll. 6. A perfect score of 18. The human delegation showed no reaction beyond polite applause. Marcus picked up the die, hefting it casually in his palm. He seemed to be testing its weight, though Vara knew that made no logical sense. The outcome was determined by probability, not by feel or intuition. He rolled. 6. Interesting, but expected. Statistical variance meant he had a reasonable chance of matching her rolls through pure luck. He rolled again. 6. Vara felt the first flutter of unease, though she suppressed it immediately. Coincidence, nothing more. Marcus rolled the 3rd time. 6. The hall erupted in noise. Vara stared at the die in disbelief. 18 to 18. Impossible. The probability of matching her perfect score through random chance was vanishingly small. Unless, shall we roll again? Marcus asked, his smile never wavering. Vara studied him with new intensity. There was something in his eyes, a depth of calculation she had not noticed before. She accessed her quantum sense again, reaching out to examine the probability field around the die. And there, she found it. The human had somehow manipulated the outcome. But how? Humans had no psionic abilities, no quantum manipulation capabilities, no probability warping technology. They rolled again. Vara achieved 15. Marcus rolled 18 again. She had lost. The next hours passed in a blur of protocol and paperwork. The marriage contract was presented, already prepared in advance. Vara read through it, with growing horror. The terms were ironclad, binding under both human and Stellan law. She would marry a human citizen named David Chun, a civilian xenobiologist currently stationed on the colony world of New Terra. The marriage would last a minimum of 5 years, during which time she would live among humans and serve as a cultural ambassador. Only after this period could she petition for dissolution of the Union. Her father, the Emperor, arrived via quantum communication, his holographic form towering over the assembly. He was furious, but even he could not break a treaty sealed by probability wager. Such agreements were sacred in Stellan culture, considered the purest form of negotiation. Turinig would destroy the Empire's reputation across the galaxy. "You will honor this agreement," he said coldly, "and you will learn from this failure." 3 days later, Vara found herself aboard a human transport vessel heading to New Terra. The ship was cramped and noisy, filled with the chaotic energy that seemed to define humanity. Children ran through corridors unsupervised. Adults engaged in loud conversations about trivial matters. The air recycling system had a persistent hum that set her teeth on edge. She had been given a small cabin with a single viewport. As the stars streaked past, she contemplated her situation. How had Marcus done it? She had analyzed every second of that game, and she still could not determine his method. Humans had no probability manipulation abilities. It should have been impossible. A young crew member brought her a meal, something called pizza. The combination of flavors was overwhelming and somewhat disturbing, but she forced herself to eat. She would need to adapt to human customs quickly. "First time on a human ship?" the crew member asked cheerfully. "Yes," Nara replied stiffly. "You'll get used to it. We're a bit chaotic, but we mean well." Chaotic. That was certainly accurate. Everything about humans seemed to embrace disorder and unpredictability. Their cities were organic tangles rather than efficient grids. Their governments were messy democracies rather than streamlined hierarchies. Even their music lacked the mathematical precision of Stellan compositions. New Terra peered in the viewport after a week of travel. It was a beautiful world, covered in vast oceans and green continents. Humans had terraformed it in just 3 generations, an impressive feat even by Stellan standards. The colony was home to 12 million humans, all engaged in the apparently haphazard process of building a civilization. David was waiting at the spaceport. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 30 in human years, with dark hair and kind eyes behind simple optical lenses. He wore practical clothing rather than ceremonial garb, and he carried a small bouquet of local flowers. "Princess Vara," he said, bowing slightly. "Welcome to New Terra. I know this situation is difficult for you. I promise to make it as comfortable as possible." She studied him carefully. He seemed sincere, lacking the calculating edge she had seen in Marcus. "You did not choose this either," she observed. "No," he admitted. "Ambassador Marcus informed me of the arrangement 3 days ago. He said you had lost a wager. I do not lose wagers. Yet here we are." He offered the flowers. "These are native to New Terra. They're called hope blossoms. They only grow in volcanic soil, turning something destructive into something beautiful." Vara took the flowers, examining their structure. The petals followed a Fibonacci spiral, showing the same mathematical elegance she found comforting. Perhaps not everything about this world would be alien. David led her to a ground vehicle, another noisy and inefficient contraption. As they drove through the colony's main settlement, she observed human life up close. Markets filled with vendors shouting prices. Parks where children played incomprehensible games. Buildings that mixed architectural styles from a dozen different Earth cultures. It was chaos, but there was something strangely vital about it. "I'm a xenobiologist," David explained as they drove. I study the interactions between Earth-based life and native ecosystems. It's fascinating work. Life finds ways to adapt that we never predict. Your species seems to embrace unpredictability, Vara said. We do. Stellans try to control probability. Humans accept that we can't, so we build systems that work despite chaos. Or maybe because of it. His words sparked something in her mind. A theory began to form. David's home was modest, a small dwelling on the edge of the settlement with a view of distant mountains. He showed her to a private room he had prepared, respecting her need for space. That evening, they shared a meal that David had cooked himself. The food was simpler than the pizza, and she found it more palatable. "May I ask you something?" Vara said as they ate. "Of course. How did Ambassador Marcus defeat me?" David smiled slightly. "He told me you would ask. The truth is, he didn't manipulate the die at all. He knew you would, though. Stellans always do when gambling. So he made sure you would roll perfectly, and then he simply matched you through probability alone." Vara stared at him. "That makes no sense. The odds of naturally rolling a perfect score are minimal." "About 0.46%, David agreed. "But humans don't think like Stellans. We don't try to control probability. We try enough times until probability works in our favor." Marcus practiced rolling that die for 6 months, 8 hours a day, until he could consistently achieve high scores through pure muscle memory and technique. It's not quantum manipulation. It's just practice. The revelation was staggering. Humans had defeated Stellan probability manipulation, not through superior technology or psionic ability, but through sheer stubborn repetition. They had turned a game of chance into a game of skill through brute force persistence. "That's insane," she said finally. "That's human," David corrected gently. Over the following weeks, Vara began to understand. Humans did not win through perfect calculation or strategic superiority. They won through adaptation, persistence, and the willingness to try ridiculous solutions until something worked. They embraced failure as a learning tool rather than a catastrophe. They built redundant systems that could withstand chaos. They cooperated across vast cultural differences through empathy rather than logic. And slowly, she found herself adapting too. She learned to cook human food, finding satisfaction in the imprecise art of it. She joined David on his research expeditions, marveling at how Earth and alien life forms were finding unexpected symbiosis. She attended community gatherings where humans argued passionately about everything from governance to art. Never quite agreeing, but somehow moving forward anyway. David was patient with her, never demanding, but always present. He shared his work, his thoughts, his world. And gradually, she found herself sharing hers in return. She taught him Stellan mathematical meditation techniques. He taught her to appreciate human music's emotional depth over mathematical precision. They found common ground in their shared curiosity about the universe. 6 months into their marriage, Vara stood on a hilltop overlooking the colony at sunset. David joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Thinking about home?" he asked. "I was thinking that I understand now why Marcus arranged this," she said. "The Stellan Empire has become stagnant. We rely on probability and prediction so much that we have forgotten how to adapt to true uncertainty. Your species thrives in chaos because you accept that you cannot control everything. And what will you do with that understanding?" "I will learn," she said. "And when I return to the Empire, I will teach. We need to remember that probability is not destiny." David smiled. "You know, you don't have to wait 5 years to leave. That was just a minimum." "I know." Vara took his hand, a gesture she had learned from him. "But I think I will stay a while longer. There is much more to learn about being human." They stood together as the sun set. A Stellan princess and a human scientist. Two representatives of species learning to see the universe through each other's eyes. The wager had been lost, but perhaps Vara thought she had won something far more valuable than 3 star systems. She had discovered that the most important things in life could not be calculated, only experienced. And that was the most human lesson of all.